There were no trains, there were no buses, there were no cars or taxis. People walked miles to work every day and back. And that's on top of the physical work that they did. They just burned far more calories than we do. We're down to about 2,000 kilocalories a day, which is a historic low. We're the least active generation that has ever existed. And that contributes to type B malnutrition, which I talked about before. So what does type B malnutrition look like? It looks like these all-American heroes. So they have chronic inflammation and type B malnutrition, and they have dysbiosis, and they have glycemic mismatch, which is why when you drag them into the labs and cut them open and you investigate, you find that almost every one of them has the early preclinical signs of those degenerative conditions, which will eventually become symptomatic and eventually kill. And that's why people such as the Hadza, the hunter-gatherers in Tanzania, and the Tsimane, forager horticulturists in Bolivia, who are more active than we are. And they don't eat the ultra-processed foods that we do. They eat basic produce. They don't have any of these conditions. They don't have them, unless they have very strong genetic risk factors. And that's only relevant in about 10% of cases. What that tells us is that 90% of all the degenerative disease we see today, we see in the community that is overwhelming our healthcare systems, is preventable and avoidable. It's unnecessary. It's a gift to us from the food companies. And it's a gift. Coincidentally, a gift means poison in German, that I think we should refuse. You had a question?
Yes, sorry, I'm not anti-USA, but...
Now we hear it. I'm not American. You can be as anti-USA as you want.
I'm just summarising what you've been saying today, and it feels like things are coming from USA, quite bad for us. I know when we were younger, we would have spam or whatever, that weren't brilliant, so that was probably about the highest content things that we would have.
Spam, that's practically a health food.
But now, it feels like everything that's coming over, well, development-wise, from remote controls, from laptops and things like that, it's actually made us become very, very inhibited. And, at the moment, yeah, it has made us lazy. And, to the fact of going to a supermarket, we've got now Bush, right? We don't need to go to a supermarket now. And so this is getting worse. So it is an epidemic.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And one of the other reasons why it's getting worse is we're locked into this economic decline now. And calories in the form of ultra-processed foods, because of the way in which government subsidies are allocated, calories in ultra-processed foods are cheaper than they are in basic produce, which is ridiculous. So, everything conspires to make us eat more of these terrible foods. You're completely right. I won't say that all of this is coming from the United States. If you go back to that slide where I showed a dozen major companies, I think 4 of those are European. So there is a strong North American contingent, but they're not the only villains. Viveka, how much time do I have?
You have what you need. We will do Q&A at the end, so just...
So I could go around.
It's 7:25, so you need to be done by then.
Okay,
We have another hour.
I'll speed up.
Yeah, that's good.
So I've said again and again, these foods are not good for you. All kinds of people have looked at this. They've done different studies, and they show that if you eat more of these foods, they do increase the risk of these types of conditions, up to and including premature death. And it's dose related. So the more of these foods you eat, the more you are likely to die. The more likely you are, if you have COVID, to have severe COVID and long COVID, and the more likely you are to develop dementia. So this is not a healthy diet. It's not helping us. It's harming us. It's harming our children. And probably via epigenetic mechanisms, it's harming our grandchildren as well, even those ones who have not yet been born. We know that it increases chronic inflammation, immunological aging, the rundown of the immune system. Full disclosure, this study was not done in humans, but in rats. It turns out that rats love ultra-processed foods as much as we do. Give them the option, and they will eat the same junk that we like. And if they eat that, they develop the same pathologies of aging that we do. And this is a very, very new paper. It's Cito et al., and what they looked at was a kind of multi-omics profiling of people who ate different foods. So you're looking at different markers in the body which are associated with better or worse health with advanced aging. And they found that in those people who ate something closer to what we used to call a Mediterranean diet, which contains more basic produce, this pattern did not change very much over time. If you were eating more ultra-processed foods, it showed all the signs of decline that we know are involved in aging. So the things that I've been saying, there are many, many scientific studies run by groups of teams and universities all over the world that show the same fundamental problem. Well, this speaks to your question about America, because America figures here. This is a league table of average life expectancy. Now, average life expectancy is a kind of approximate way of measuring average health. A country that is on average healthier will have on average a longer life expectancy. And I want to show you two traces in particular. In 1950, the United States was the 13th healthiest country in the world. Britain was the 10th healthiest. Now, the United States eats more ultra-processed food than anyone else, and they have fallen to position 53. They're probably 55 at this point in time. Britain was then 10th, and we have fallen to 36, probably 39 by now. And we are, after the United States, one of the nations that consumes the most of our calories in the form of ultra-processed foods. So the more ultra-processed foods you eat, the more you as an individual, the more your culture, your nation, will show that same pattern of decline. And the one trace that stands out and is going in a very different direction, that's Japan. And in 1950, they were 45th average life expectancy, the 45th average healthiest. Now look at them now. They're constantly and consistently in the top three. Why is that? The Japanese developed a category of food called foshu, food for specific health uses, and it didn't really go anywhere until lots of little companies were doing very small things that no one was interested in, or not many. And then one day, a large company called Meiji released a functional food product. They got a license, and they thought maybe we could do something with it, and it caught on. People thought, hey, this is a major brand. They trust brands. We don't trust. I think we don't give our trust away as readily as we used to. We've become very cynical and distrusting, very skeptical, and so you should be. But that was a couple of decades ago. The consumers trusted Meiji. They bought into this, and then the market changed. Almost a lot of the small companies that were selling kosher products, they started to see their sales increasing. And now, if you introduce a new food into the Japanese marketplace, it won't do well unless it has a health claim attached to it. The health claims are based on quite rigorous criteria. So what's happened? Well, I'm trying to show you. Yeah. They've just got healthier and healthier and healthier. And they haven't employed more doctors. They're not using more drugs. They're just eating a healthier diet. A diet which doesn't cause chronic inflammation, type 2 malnutrition, dysbiosis, and glycemic mismatch. It's so simple. Getting these four basic things right. And the payoff is phenomenal. It is so cost effective. It's effective, it's cost effective, and it's kind. No need for medication, no need for hospitalizations and surgeries. Well, still some, but not nearly as many. We don't need that. That's just 19th century stuff. Let's go straight to the chase. Oh, stop. Hey, you doing this? Are you sabotaging? You're sabotaging.
No.
Yes, you are. Okay, what I want to show you, in an ideal world. Oh, come on. So let's take Mr. Average. Sorry about the delay, folks. Let's take the average. I could play hypothetical games to tell you what I think it should do. All right, cheers, Tom. What a disappointment. Cheers, Tom. Now let's assume that Mr. Stammer is eating what we all eat. Well, of course, we know he doesn't. He's very high up above, takes bribes from anyone it seems, and all the rest of us have to suffer. Anyway, let's supposing he's eating the diet that we eat. If he's eating a lot of post-modern ultra-processed foods, a lot of ultra-processed foods, he has a very high 6:3 ratio, 15 to 1 on average, not polyphenols, therefore he has chronic inflammation. Now that might show up as arthritic pain, that's chronic inflammation is involved in that, in which case he goes to a rheumatologist and gets, let's say, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory or maybe a prednisone injection into the joint. These are both very primitive forms of intervention. Or he may have coronary artery disease, essential hypertension, or fatty liver disease, all of which are caused by the modern diet. And in which case he goes to different doctors, different specialists, they use different interventions, all caused by the same underlying problem, the elephant in the room that I showed you earlier. He may have chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, he may have a brain tumor. It's hard to understand these recent policy shifts without that. Or he may have migraines, where chronic inflammatory stress appears to be involved. Or he may be suffering from anxiety, depression, reduced impulse control, explosive intimate disorder. All of these things, all of which involve chronic inflammatory stress. So what do? I think rather than sending him to a neurologist, a hepatologist, a rheumatoid specialist, and all the rest, why don't we just redress the balance and restore metabolic normality by giving him omega-3s and polyphenols? Well, we could do that, but there's just one more problem to deal with. He also has dysbiosis because prebiotic fibers have been taken out of the modern diet, and that means that he has chronic inflammatory stress and dysbiosis and the wrong population of microbes in his intestines, which causes problems both there and everywhere else as well. The answer, my dear friends, is surprisingly simple. Let's just get the 6:3 balance right, put in the polyphenols, and if you do that, almost immediately, most of the chronic inflammatory stress goes away. And if we then start feeding him prebiotic fibers, what we find is that dysbiosis disappears, and most of the gastrointestinal problems do as well. Now, I've talked about how to stop chronic inflammatory stress. I think maybe I need to get near to the computer. Maybe I can. If we want to stop dysbiosis, then we have to use a different approach. If you're eating prebiotic fibers, which we always used to do, these are fuel, not for you, but for the probiotic species of bacteria that live inside you. So they feed these bacteria, their probiotic species, such as bifidobacteria, lactobacilli, but there's a bunch of other ones as well. Those are the ones that people know about. And if you give fiber, and that comes into the gut, and they feed these bacteria, these probiotics, they produce postbiotic compounds that talk to our cells, the colonocytes that line the intestine. And these compounds tell our cells, don't be inflamed, don't be cancerous, be immunologically functional. If you're eating the right fibers, you have the right microbes, and they become part of your own body's defense system. No, you're not having it. I think it's working now, because I'm switching the computer.
I got some batteries if you need.
You think any batteries?
Maybe, if it's
I think I can keep going. So this is a healthy configuration. Under these conditions, you're eating probiotics, prebiotic fibers. You have the right probiotics. They become part of your metabolism, your immune system, and they're absolutely helping you. The conversation that is occurring between these microbes and your cells is completely positive. This is an optimal configuration. The problem is that the food manufacturers have removed a lot of the prebiotic fibers from our diet. So the good bacteria start to die out. There's nothing there for them to live on. And they're replaced by these ones, these little fellows in red. And they're proteolytic, they consume protein. They don't eat prebiotic fibers, they need protein. So where do they get that from? Not from your food, because all of that protein is being digested in the small intestine. The only proteins available to them in the large intestine are called mucins, and mucins form the mucus layer. And they erode the mucus layer, and they come into direct contact with our cells. And this triggers enormous, intense focal chronic inflammatory stress, which can very rapidly become so severe that these cells there start to open up. And now you have leaky gut. And now macromolecules such as the lipopolysaccharides move out of there into the bloodstream. You now have endotoxemia, which amongst other things causes fatty liver disease, which is why half the world's population now has this condition. But it also causes cardiovascular damage, immunological damage, neurological damage. It's really not a happy configuration to be in. Very, very simple to put this right. Just put the prebiotic fibers back into the diet where they always used to be. immunity, restore a healthy population of microbes, and everything starts falling back into place and your problems go away. A lot of problems go away. This is the best data that we have. If you eat more fiber, it reduces the risk of early, which means preventable death, by 30%, which is huge. There isn't a single drug that can do that. Not even all the drugs in the doctor's manual can achieve a 30% reduction in early death. Can't do it. This is hugely protective, hugely important. And this just shows you some of the conditions that it helps to reduce. And this is new data. It also seems to be highly protective against dementia. So I know you think that balance not as important. Xenobiotic is just as important. The fibers are just as important. And if anything, I'm more proud of xenobiotic because it is such a interesting and complicated formula to work on. I want to show you another little bit of history to explain why these fibers are so important. We used to eat huge amounts. We used to eat lots of roots and shoots and tubers. And this data is derived from pre-Christian, it means 2,000 years ago. Mesoamerica, that's the thin strip that joins North and South America. So southern Mexico, and then you've got Guatemala, and you've got Nicaragua, and a couple of other countries there. And there was a group of people who lived in that area called the Olham people. And they consumed very large amounts of these prebiotic fibers, probably representative of that time. And some work has been done on this. It's called quantitative archaeology. And people have measured the fields and the mills and everything else that we can have access to in this culture. They've estimated, and I've read the papers and I find them very persuasive, that these people were consuming about 140 grams of prebiotic fibers a day. And those people who live in that area were living a rural, kind of primitive existence, still do to this day. So they're obtaining prebiotic fibers from maize, corn, from beans, nopales, and a couple of other sources. Do we know about the health of the people who lived 2,000 years ago? Not really. Not really. We think they were healthy. The people who still live that way are very, very healthy. We do have more recent data, and this is from the Victorians. This is my own data. We know that they were consuming much, much less, about 40 grams a day, mostly from Jerusalem artichokes, which grow like weeds and contain huge amounts of inulin, so they were eating lots of prebiotic fiber. We do have medical tests from that time. We do lots of medical records. And what those records tell us is they had no ideas. IBD, hardly knew what it was. Colorectal cancer was known, but it was so rare that the doctors of the day were able to trace it to specific families, and they were looking at the genetic cases of colorectal cancer. Nobody else had it. So it was recognized but rare. 40 grams a day is more than enough. How much do we eat today, prebiotic fiber? This is the best estimate, 4 grams a day. So much of this has been stripped out of our diet. Of course, you have dysbiosis. Of course, you have intestinal disease. Of course, you have leaky gut, endotoxemia, and everything that follows. That is why more fibers cut the risk of early death by 30%. It's huge. What are these fibers? Well, they're obviously carbohydrates. These are your classic 6 carbon rings. And this is something called fructooligosaccharides, and it's a very small molecule. So when the bacteria start to consume it, they do it like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. These chains are very short, so the fermentation process takes place very rapidly, which is why you should never use this on its own. You have to add larger amounts of inulin, same molecule but much, much longer, so the fermentation is slower. Larger amounts of 3 or 4 beta-glucans from oats, larger, slower again. And the heavy lifting is done by resistant starch from sources such as green banana, which is a very large molecule, so the reaction here is very slow because you need them all. Because when this blend of fibers enters the large intestine, everything is moving, so the FOS is like the blue touch paper. You set that up, it starts the reaction in the ascending column, and then the inulin takes over, then the beta-glucans, and then resistant starch. And in this way, you change the microbiota throughout the entire large intestine. It's not as neat as this. I'm just showing this in a diagrammatic way to illustrate the point, but it's a kind of a relay race. The longer and slower fibers do their thing further down in the large intestine. So we have these antidotes now. We can stop chronic inflammation really effectively. with omega-3s and polyphenols. Neither of those will do the trick on its own. You need them both. It's a binary system. We can reverse dysbiosis and restore something which is called eubiosis, that's a healthy configuration of microbes, using these time-released blends of prebiotic fibers. You can alleviate type B malnutrition with very broad-based support programs involving not just all vitamins and minerals, but all of the most important phytonutrients, such as the polyphenols, such as carotenoids and xanthophylls, 1,316 beta-glucans, all kinds of other compounds like that. You need a lot of them. And as for glycemic mismatch, you can do that yourself. Less sugar, less starch, more exercise. And many medics have shown that if you do this, you can reverse, cure diabetes and metabolic syndrome. And if you can't, won't, then there are A and PK upregulators. The best known of those is metformin, but there are many others. This was actually a natural compound. It's derived from Gallego officinalis, the French bladder. It's been made into a drug because it's such a good drug. But there's many other natural compounds which do exactly the same thing. For details, again, go to my blog. I talk about these things there, and you can find out how to grow your own exercise in capsule. That's what it is. Actually, some of you may come across jagolan. Do you know, does jagolan mean anything to you? Okay, it's a traditional tea made from Jagostemna pentathlon. It contains compounds which the body recognizes as physical exercise. You're tricking your body into thinking it's taking physical exercise. So the blood sugar levels go down. You develop more glucose and insulin receptors in your muscle. Your muscle gets fitter. It's a cheat, but it's the equivalent of exercise in capsule. Yes. Jagolan, J-I-A-O-G-U-L-A-N, and you can buy seeds and grow them. They grow quite well in Britain. You can make your own tea, and you can drink exercise by I don't believe in medicalizing everyone, so if you don't need our product, don't buy them. I strongly recommend that people test themselves first when we have the balance test. If you have a good result, then congratulations, you're eating a healthy diet, you don't need it, and we give you your money back. Or I don't. But if you have a bad result, do something about it, and it's now very, very easy to do that. My whole point of being here is to close down hospitals. I want to starve the drug companies. I want to create a situation where people can expect a longer, healthier, and more, just a better way of life. Because if you have these basic things in place, you're far less likely to develop anxiety and depression. You're going to be more able to deal with stressors of all different kinds. You will live a better and a healthier and happier life. And if I can leave you with anything at all, it's that. So I need to leave time for